Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome today's guest speaker. Dr. Maria Bargo is a postdoctoral researcher, a sociologist, and anthropologist working in Argentina. She got her PhD scholarship to do a doctorate at UNSAM, the National University of St. Martin in Buenos Aires. She has been awarded a scholarship from CONICET, the Scientific National Organization in Argentina, and she has a track record of researching Opus Dei in Argentina, as well as Catholic traditionalist groups such as the Society of Pius X. Her publications in this area include articles on Catholic poverty alleviation efforts in Argentina. Today, we're delighted to have her talking to the Irish Institute for Catholic Studies about the Case of Opus Dei, Catholic poverty alleviation efforts in Argentina. Welcome, Maria, and we're delighted to have you.
Okay, hi, hola. My name is Maria, as it said. I'm drinking mate. It's from a beverage from Argentina. That's why you might see me doing this while I talk. It's morning here, so kind of a breakfast thing. Well, I would like to thank Patricia and Garlic for the help they gave me trying to organize this lecture, and also to your university for hosting me, for inviting me. And before I start, I wanted to make a brief comment about the situation of the universities and the scientific organism system in Argentina, which is very hard nowadays. There's like a big chance that they stop working next semester due to some decisions from the national government, which are like basically don't giving them money. Some universities, like maybe you've heard of UBA, which is one of the biggest, and it's like very famous one. It's working without lights on because they can't pay the bill. So it's a crazy situation. And I was able to do this research thanks to studying in the public and free university, and for the scholarship CONICET gave me. I thought I could say something about it. And well, now we can start about to talk about this research I did. It's based on my PhD thesis. Uh, I, okay. I would like to begin with some context for you to understand what are we talking about. It's first about Catholicism in Argentina, about poverty, and also about NGOs or other ways of organization of poverty management, right? So Catholicism in Argentina has like a very important role and had an important role during diverse periods of our history. First, started in the implementation and creation of the national state, and also in other, for instance, law discussions and like public and politic presence, right? And also, for instance, the constitution, national constitution, says that the federal government is Catholic, although there's also religious freedom in the country. But this there are differences if you belong to Catholicism or not. For instance, Catholicism is a public entity, but the other religions have to register as if they were an NGO in this country and inform their activities, their beliefs, their ideas. And also, until the 90s, the president should be Catholic here. So it's like a very strong religion, no institution, church. And some authors who speak about this Catholicism here say there is like a Catholic culture, no? Which would mean that the national identity is very close to Catholicism here, and also that there's kind of an habitus, a Catholic habitus, right? Like people would baptize their children, get married by church, although they might not be very Catholic at all, but they also would everyone knows a bit about Catholicism, and even it influences some ways of thinking here. And according to the last numbers we've got about it, it's almost 63% of the population. This was this survey was done in 2019. There was one before which said that it was 76% of the population. So there's less Catholic people now, but it's still a very strong religion. And also, it is interesting to know that Catholicism had played a main role in working against poverty, let's say, not against the poor, but you know what I mean. So since the beginning of our history as a nation, there were charities fundraising, usually organized by the elites, the high class groups. But also when the state started taking care of this issue, which was around the 50s, that they created this specific organism to manage poverty after Peronism. Peronismo, I don't know if you've heard, it's like one of a huge political movement that followed Peron. They created these areas to take care of the issue, and Catholics usually started working in those areas, and maybe they wouldn't work there, but they would influence the posture, like the positions, the perspectives of the state that work in, or the state areas that work in those areas. In these issues. And also, I think it's worth to be said that poverty is a very structural and important problem in Argentina. Nowadays, it's almost 57% and probably more now of the population is under the line of poverty. So it's always in something, right? And Catholicism has this close link. And also, after the 90s, due to a neoliberal government, there was a growth in NGOs, right? Other groups that were in state or not the state, get out of those issues, and so NGOs started working towards these things. And I think this is important to be said because almost 70% of the people who work there are women, right, in NGOs, according to some authors. And they say this could be attributed to the flexibility of these spaces. Also, because they are a bit, there's some informality in the way the work is organized. Also, because they can combine it with family tasks, and also because it's usually linked to women's things, like taking care of people. So I think, and this is something I saw during my research. That's why I'm talking about it. So now I think I could go further. Okay. Now I would like to mention some things about my research methodology, or my perspective while I did this research. So I first wanted to talk about how did this research emerge. I was raised in Bellavista. It's a small town near Buenos Aires, which is very particular, let's say, because it has lots of Catholic conservative groups, and it has almost, if you take 10 blocks, ¿cómo se llama? Square, la redonda, there are around 9 Catholic schools. So they are almost more Catholic schools than people, But when I lived there, I went to this school that's Santa Atenea, which is a mercy school, one of the few mercy schools in Argentina. And it was more like an open-minded Catholic school. And I always find very strange that there were other options, other ways of being Catholic. So when I studied anthropology, that was one of its aims, is to understand otherness. I said, well, I should try to understand this Catholic other, right? Because it's so weird for me. I mean, why would you think it's more important to, no sé, do everything like what's said, like go to mass every day, than, no sé, killing someone, It's a bit exaggerated, but you understand me. So I first started studying during my degree, that we have also like a kind of thesis. I studied Society of St. Pius X, which is a group that was created after the Vatican II Concilium. they were against it because they thought it was a modernization of church and it would lost all the traditions and stuff. So I started studying this group. I did my thesis on it. And then I saw that there was a lack of anthropological approaches to these groups, to Catholic conservative groups, right? And even in sociology, it was also like a few things made from a historical perspective. So I started to being interested in these groups. Huh? And then for my PhD, I tried to think about one relevant group in Catholicism in Argentina. And I said, well, I guess I could study Opus Dei. And so I tried to get in, right, to do field work. And I was lucky because I have lots of contacts of people who were were members or belonged to Opus Dei, or people who knew people who belonged to Opus Dei. So I got like several options to get in, but there were also some things that excluded me from participating in some spaces I wanted to, like legal stuff. It's one of the activities I wanted to know had like this was in suit for child labor, so I couldn't go there as it was reconfigurating, and also because as I was a girl, no, and some activities were only for boys, they have a very straight division of gender division of activities. So well, but I was able to know lots of the activities I wanted, and then I used several resources to remain doing fieldwork. And this was I knew about Catholicism, not only because I've been raised Catholic, but also because I studied it. Also because there's a class aspect in Opus Dei in Argentina. Usually lots of people from Opus Dei could be think of as high class, or then I'll talk about it. And also, and well, I knew like surnames that they knew, so it was easy for me to enter there, you know. And also because I asked for my university to give me some documents that say that I was studying, right? So for them not to be afraid. And then I think it's worth it to talk a bit about anthropology, why I think it's a good perspective to study this kind of otherness. It's first because anthropology with reflexivity exercises has lots of conscious of its own perspective. No, we though it sounds a bit narcissist, it's we can think, we are sure that we are the ones that make it and collect and analyze the data, and we have certain perspectives, and we sometimes have some pre-notions of pre-ideas or judgments about these othernesses, and also because there are some common sense around these people that we need to explicit to try to build something further than that, not to reproduce those ideas. So I think that's a very interesting fact about anthropology. And another thing that it's new about what I did is that I did ethnography. I mean, I went to all the activities. I was there for a long period of time. There were some researches that had like some participant observation moments, but it wasn't like this deep, I guess. I was like 4 years or 5 like working with them, and I went like every week to different activities and tried to meet like different people from inside. So I was like able to know lots of things, and also because my focus on my perspective was from anthropology of religions and not class, which also would sometimes the class perspective on these kind of groups would reproduce some of those common senses I mentioned. So what I tried to see during my research was the ways Opus Dei approach poverty, and also its representations about poverty. No, so as I mentioned, the Catholicism had a straight link with poverty. There's lots of Catholics working to alleviate poverty or eradicate poverty in some cases too. But usually when these kind of actions are studied nowadays, like from an anthropological or sociological perspective, the groups that are studied are not those associated with conservative, Catholic conservative or elites, right? So there was this like lack of knowledge about this kind of approaches to poverty, no? And also when these initiatives are studied, sometimes they are reduced to these aspects I mentioned here, which are like them trying to solve their guilt, the guilt that they feel, or try to make some tax evasion or to pacify these groups that could get angry because of the unfair situation they are suffering, no? And so I tried, maybe by focusing on religion, to have a more wide perspective about their approach. And when I worked with them and when I started doing participant observation, I saw that there were two kinds of activities. That some of them were mainly trying to educate volunteers and charitable women in different aspects. No, it's not just like a formal education, but like to form them. And others that were focused on the poor, no, and giving them tools and knowledges that would help them go through life. But I decided to focus in these first ones, those activities who put in the first place the volunteers, no, and the charitable woman. And I did participant observation in lots of parts of. This is the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires, which is around the Buenos Aires city, some of the suburbs, but I also went to Buenos Aires province to do different activities. I worked here in San Miguel. I don't know if you can see this, I hope. Here in Buenos Aires, I went to different cities. I went to La Matanza here. This is one of the biggest districts of Buenos Aires suburbs. This is already a bit far, but this is like the most populated and the poorest one. So they work here. I work here with them. I work here in Luján. I think here Luján. La Plata, Nareco, which is more far away. So I did like lots of activities all around with them. And I will mention 4 of those, which were like the main chapters of my thesis. One of those were fundraising events. Then there was this DAS is Department of Social Action or Social Action Department of a school, like a private school, Catholic school for girls. It's funny because, well, DAS means give, no? So it's like kind of a smart idea. And PAS are also organized by the DAS. PAS are social action projects that they imply meeting the other, like maybe making an encounter in other people's school or another institution, like more this has some volunteer activities, and this it's included in like the curricular activities. And then I guess it's Impulso Social. It's an NGO. So I'll start with the first a brief story, like context about Opus Dei. Opus Dei was founded in 1928 by a Spanish priest called San Jose. Bueno, now he's a saint, that's why I say San Jose Maria Escrivá de Balaguer. It was the civil war in Spain was starting, so it was hard at first, but then during the 50s they reached every continent and they had a quick expansion. And it's the only personal prelator in the whole church. This sphere, they acquired this sphere, this configuration in 1982, but recently, maybe you heard about it in last year, Pope Francis made a motu proprio where they took some of their rights. I mean, they reduced their hierarchy. They now should answer to the local bishop before they could answer to their own authorities, and now they have to inform about their activities and other things that were very controversial in those days. And also they have a specific charisma, no? A specific way of reaching sanctity according to the Escrivá de Balaguer, who founded the group. that you can reach sanctity in your ordinary life, no, in your regular activities, in your professional life. It's like trying to do your everyday actions in a perfect human way, they say. And this means that it's not necessary to do big stuff, no, to transcendent things, that just the ordinary can be a space where you can sanctify yourself. So this, they, due to all these specificities, they have like a specific ways of membership. There are the numeraries and associates. These are, and well, assistant numeraries too. These are celibate, like they can't have sex or families of their own. Numerarias live in centers, separating women on one side and men on the other. Associates are also celibates, but they could live in other places. These should be professionals. This could not be. It's okay if they are not. And assistant numeraries, they are only girls. They live in administrations, and their profession is like housekeeping activities. There are controversies recently here in Argentina since a couple of years, and I heard in Ireland something similar too. We can, if I know something about it, if you want to know more, we can talk afterwards. And then the supernumeraries, which are those who have family, no, like common citizens that belong to Opus Dei. And another thing which is important for this research is that the social action of Opus Dei has like a very special way of being organized. There are like, well, the apostolados, no? There are like cooperative, it's not cooperative, it's corporative initiatives, sorry for the spelling, corporative initiatives, which are those who belong to Opus Dei, that Opus Dei is legally responsible of them. But there are also personal initiatives. Most of the activities they do are personal initiatives, that those are supposed to just be inspired by the spirit of Opus Dei. And they have spiritual support, like sometimes they have priests that go there and to confess people or whatever, but they are not legally responsible. So there's just few things that belong to Opus Dei, and others are like linked. But besides that, they also work with lots of other NGOs that could be Catholic mostly, but they are not linked to Opus Dei even. But they just have some arrangements and they work together. So most of the activities are like belong to like 3 or 4 big groups of they say civil associations. For instance, the schools I'm gonna talk about, they belong to 2, like the schools for the rich belong to one of the associations, the school for the poor. Sorry for these terms, that it's easier to understand. Belong to another association. Impulso Social, which is the NGO, belongs to another one. So they have like everything organized like that. So first, the fundraising events. These are events organized in the Jockey Club. I don't know if you have a Jockey Club. It's like one of the main and most like the richest social club in Argentina. They get together there. It's mostly women from over 75 years old. They consist in artistic shows, and they get together to raise fundraising for Buen Consejo School, which is the school for the poor. As I said, this is this school has help from the state. It's not like it doesn't belong to the government, but they give them some money. But the families should pay a bit more. They think that would help them like value those kind of actions or those spaces. So, and it's just for girls, and the girls come from this slum or shanty town, I don't know how you call it, but it's one of the most famous ones in Buenos Aires city. It's called Villa 2124. So most of the girls go to school come from that place, no? But besides that, it's also a space of an activity for sociability, right? The ladies get together there and they chat, they see these artistic number. In this case, there were gauchos doing like folk dance with national flags and like, well, very patriotic event. And also it has raffles and sometimes it has testimonies most of the times. So there are two aspects that caught my attention while I went to these numerous events they had. On the one side, I said this commonerization, I would say in Spanish, plebeización, no? Which is that they distance from the association of themselves as an elite. No, they don't recognize themselves as elite groups, although they are in the most expensive club in Argentina, right? And this is an aspect that there's an anthropologist who studies the Argentinian high classes, she says, and that she says that one of the main ways of distinction of these groups is simplicity and being humble, no? So this might be an aspect that a characteristic aspect of our Argentinian high classes, no? Don't recognizing themselves with a high class or elites, trying to be more, be able to be in every place, right? Not being recognized as high class. And also this could lead them to feel less responsible or not having the whole responsibility over poverty, to confront poverty. There are other people then, if you are not the highest, who can should get involved in solving this problem. And then the testimonies I mentioned is the exposition of exemplary cases, which are those successful girls from the school who got, for instance, scholarships or job offers or are doing a pasantía, or an internship, no? Which, and these cases that are shown usually validate the actions. It's like worth it to spend money on this, to give money for Buen Consejo, as the girls are very good. And also the values, right? Because there are girls who get inserted in the economic system, no? Opus Dei usually have or defend economic and political ideas close to liberalism, meritocracy, those kind of values. And also is one of the, I think, a few Catholic groups who have like a cool relationship with money. I mean, if you can reach sanctity in your daily activities, in your professional life, and you have money, it's because you are doing things right, no? So they don't have this much concern about having money. But also, I say those testimonies are given by the good poor, and the good poor are those who accept the help that Opus Dei give, but also are those who don't look like poor. Sounds controversial, but I'll try to explain a bit more. Once I was in one of these events, and there were two ladies in front of me, like in the front row, and I heard them talking, and one of the girls was presenting her story, and she said, "I'm impressed on how good she talks, how well she talks." And I kept thinking about that, and I've heard other comments of that type. It's like the way she talks is more similar to ours than to what we associate with someone poor, right? So these good poor are those who can, like Mati said, I don't know how to say this, but that you can't notice that where they come from, no? They learn to be different from what they are supposed to be. So these are two of the main characteristics of these events. Then there is a social action department of Colegio del Buen Aire, which is an art school, but this one's private, Catholic, and for girls too. It's placed in San Isidro, which is, let me show you the map. This is San Isidro. This is the richest district in Buenos Aires, probably in Argentina. So it has a specific population different from Buen Consejo, the one I mentioned. And although the authorities say it's an area that belongs to a school, and the authorities say it's crucial for the educational project and everything, but it's self-sustainable and mainly formed by volunteers. No, they have some small team that works at the school, but they have to they take care of everything. No, if they spend, they try to get money from another part. So it's an interesting conception of crucialness. And this area aims to create these influential citizens that would have this plus of knowing the reality. I don't know if you say plus, like they have this added value for knowing the reality, for being in contact with this other reality that some influential citizens maybe are not like this uh, well-formed, well-educated. And there are some other things that can be seen in their approach to poverty. There's these workshops or activities I went to that are called Das Más. Das is the department. Más is more, so it's you give more. It's a extracurricular activity. And it's like workshops for the mothers to make things for their homes or for the kids, like to help them with their homework and things like that. And it has this, I mentioned the equalizing attitude. That's that they keep saying that you should speak to the other as if it is yourself, or it's not yourself, but as it was yourself. Then they say like everyone has to collaborate, so they ask them to bring something also, and then they say that everyone has its own needs. So they are, maybe there's a distance from considering poverty as something structural, right? It's another approach, another understanding. Also, I speak about the moralization of poverty. Although they don't say that this is a common speech here in Argentina, the poor people are poor because they want to. They don't say these kind of things, but sometimes they say that they are responsible of remaining in that poor, right? Like you should like try to get out of that state. Like you should be a good poor, right? Accept our help to get out of this situation, no? And also there are some says like sometimes they say like you should try to wake them up, no? Because sometimes they are sleeping, they are not like doing everything they should. So you should try, this was another interview, you should try to teach them something without them noticing, no? Always positioning ourselves in a different a role than the other, no? Trying to teach them, trying to educate them, because well they don't sometimes do everything they should or they can. And then another aspect that I will talk about later, it's maternalism, and this is a very special way of approaching otherness. I will talk about it now. These things where they pass here I say pass, it's a social action projects, but also the personal image workshop. These were two activities where people from Buenaire, the school of San Isidro, met with girls from Buen Consejo. Buen Consejo is the school that has its population comes from Villa 21-24, no? So these were like encounters between these two populations. And maternalism, that I will explain later, is one of the main ways of approaching that they have. The workshop, personal image workshop, was given, and it's every year, by the mothers of the girls of Buenaire to the girls in the last years of school of Buen Consejo. And it would be a bit about fashion, but they said it's more than that. It's like the way you should, your presence, right? The way you should behave. And its aim was to make them able to insert in the profession, in work, in job, to get a job, basically, or to study, no? To continue their adult life in the accepted ways, let's say. But the aims of this, I put domesticated, it's a bit of a strong word, but I think it helps understand the interest. They try also to repress these marks, these things that show that where they come from, right? So they would teach them how to move, how to speak, how to use makeup, in a not very exaggerated way that they would attribute to poverty, to cover their and not use very tight clothes. No, different ways of like repressing those class marks. No, and also they would, the same that the exemplary cases in the fundraising events, validate their model, no, the economical, moral, social model. And they would speak about a correlation between aesthetic aspects and values, no, and values that they consider of the civilization, no. So, well, these were very interesting activities I went to. And the other was el Proyecto Acción Social o Solidaria, which is this, there are other activities that I went to display. One of them was display. It was an encounter between girls of like 10-year-old girls, more or less, from Buen Aire and from Buen Consejo, no? And it was very interesting to see the way that the girls from Buen Aire learn how to incorporate some ways of behaving, no? The way they move, it was very clear the differences, no? Their bodies, the way they speak. And this had also an impact on the way that the girls from Buen Consejo, their vision about themselves, no? And I had this good example. I was talking with the girls of Buen Consejo. They knew me because I went to school with them too while I doing participant observation. And there was this group, they told me about the activities they did during the day before the play. And then one of them says, have you noticed that they are all blonde? And I'm like, well, not everyone. And they say, yeah, but they are more like viste tipo, that is like a way, like a, ¿cómo se dice? Cool way of saying, of speaking, which is like easy, like something like that. I know if it sounds, it makes a sound, an interesting sound for you. And they say they are more viste tipo, and we are more savage, no? Their perception of themselves in this encounter makes them see the others as blonde and as rich, and themselves as savage, no? The ways of behaving. And I also noticed, beside this, what I call maternalism, or a maternalistic way of approaching otherness, in the case of girls from Buen Aire. And I'm going to explain why I'm talking about this. First, it was because during the play, the girls from Buen Aire did and show to the girls of Buen Consejo. They interrupt the whole play and said, do you understand what's happening? They explained the message, right? So they were acting, they interrupted the play, and they said, did you understand what happened? And they explained in a very pedagogic way to the girls of the same age as them what was happening and what they should learn from that play, no? And I talk about this because it implies an infantilization of otherness, and lots of authors speak about this, no? Infantilization of the old people, of the poor, of the sick people, indigenous people, women sometimes, no? But I think it's more about a performance, not only seeing other as younger, but also positioning yourself as a mother in this case, not someone that has to take care of you, someone that has to teach you. So a kind of close performance that position themselves in a higher position, right? Sorry for repeating position too many times. And well, it's linked to this association of women and motherhood, no? On being mothers. And also, I like to speak about this because maybe you've heard this, but when some of us or some people talk about the approach to poverty, mainly in these countries and populist governments, they talk about paternalism. And the poverty management activities are usually done by women, and they have this caring will, no? So I think this maternalism concept was like a better way of understanding this approach. And then the last activity I would like to present is social impulse or impulso social, which is that ONG I told you. NGO, sorry, it sounds OMG, which is an organization that aims to create future leaders. So they have different kind of activities. I'm just mentioning a couple of those. Some of them are the political forums or talks for these activities. It was very interesting, the selections of those who were going to expose. They were, in one of the cases I went, one girl from Venezuela and another girl from Cuba, whose families were against the regime of the moment, and they had more like liberal and meritocratic positions. No, so they would again validate the model and also be shown as exemplary cases, right? The cases to follow, the examples to follow for the girls. And then there were activities which were not like talking. They went to different places. This was when I went to to Luján, which is wasn't in the map because it's more far away. It's also in Buenos Aires. No, Luján, no, to Areco, which is another place in Buenos Aires, which consists on a, this was interesting because at first I said that they sometimes collaborate with other organizations. And this was a collaboration with an organization called CONIN, which works with child malnutrition, or, well, kids with bad nutrition issues. So we did this like survey or census kind of thing in two shanty towns in that city, trying to detect these cases so that they will, not say, follow them and help their moms to like feed them well and things like that. And besides the activities and this aim of the trip, some things called my attention that were well, on the one side, this professionalism, no, an attitude which conceives social action as a serious thing, no. They would ask everyone if what was their profession, and they would take doctors and nutritionists, nurses, and they would organize everything according to your profession or what you study. The anthropologist wasn't very useful for them, so they just let me write on my notebook all around. But they would have like a very serious conception of the work. They would try to make a systematic intervention and offer a stable actions in those places. They were very organized, like you had to meet previously, not just go to a trip. They were extremely efficient, no? We were supposed to do one neighborhood and we did like two in the same day. Like it was amazing the way they worked, no? So I talk about professionalism as a way of approaching poverty in these cases. But then, I'm sorry for this Spanish, I didn't see it before. It's this position is easy to understand and sacrifice. But these were other two things that I was able to notice in this trip. That every time something was needed, before everyone asked, they were doing it. No, for instance, once I went to the toilet and it flooded, like water came out from it, and I said like, oh, saw one girl and I comment her that I saw that and I was gonna talk to one of the organizers. And when I came back, the girl had cleaned everything and she put like a rope for so no one enters, so if the bathroom recovered, no. So they were very willing to help, no, without saying it, without no one asking for. And the sacrifice idea, no, they offer themselves to help. And this is also a very interesting thing because it's there is also a link in literature, in references, bibliographic references of these kind of attitudes with a gender-based thing, no, women sacrificing and caring of everyone, no. So this is another of the things I noticed in this last activity. And well, I would like now to close a bit, to conclude the presentation a bit, but just some ideas to finish with. There's a necessity or a need of contact with this poor in the case of these poor people in the case of Opus Dei, and maybe even of an existence of poverty. That's why I put alleviation efforts instead of eradication in this case, because I had some interviews in which I was told that poverty was still a mystery, no? So maybe we have like, it has something to teach us, no? Maybe there's no need to remove it, like the whole poverty thing, no? And in the case of Opus Dei, it's used to educate yourself, no? I mean, it sounds bad. Maybe I'm sorry for that, but what I mean is that this encounter with poverty helps you put into practice some knowledges, some abilities, learn and put into practice, and ways of approaching otherness, no? And this also implies some notions of poverty that are have an impact on the poor themselves, on the way they conceive themselves, as the case of the Proyecto de Acción Social. And in the case of Opus Dei, people, all these they learn and they put into practice can be used for their future occupations and the daily occupations, which are the way to sanctity, as we mentioned before, which would make them become leaders, no, with this plus of knowing the reality, with professionalism in the ways of taking care of things, even social activities if they do that, and or being pedagogical and close mothers in the future, which are one of the other, like maternalistic, by having learned maternalism in the approach to otherness, they become good mothers, which is one of the other main future options they have. So, no sé, that's it. And now I was willing to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maria. Okay, Carly will turn off our recording.